I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're taking a look at a gripping tale. It is called Custody Part 1, A Father's Fight for His Son. It's an amazing book, an important book, written by a real-life father and a real-life warrior. His name is Danial Kenneth Mason. This true story chronicles his relentless fight for justice and custody of his only son amidst a biased legal system. Join us right now as we explore the emotional and legal battles that defined his journey and changed the course of his life. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Sweet Spire Literature Management for helping us put him in the spotlight today. We ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Danial, great to see you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Logan. I do appreciate it very, very much.
I appreciate your time. It is clear that the custody system in the United States and Australia too is no doubt biased because almost always custody goes to the mother. If it was a fair system, half the time it would be going to the mother, or half the time it would be going to the father, or some kind of joint custody arrangement. But that's not the case. It's usually women who win and men who are demonized when it comes to family court. Is that your experience in Australia?
Absolutely. Well, my story starts in Australia. It goes to New Zealand. And it was in the 1970s in New Zealand when I applied for custody for my son. And like I said, it was all towards the women, because the law at the time stated that a child under 5 will automatically go with the mother. My child was 3.5 when his mother left us. 3.5.
Amazing. So your mother, your wife or his mother can abandon you and take the child, and there's no recourse or little recourse, right?
So in my case, what it was that she, unbeknownst to me, she had an affair going on for nearly 12 months. My child, we only just shifted into a brand new home. 3 or 4 weeks later, she decided to go with her lover. We'll put it that way. She left, but she left the child with me because we believe, as we found out later, that the person she was with probably didn't want any to have the boy there. So that meant that to take my case on, I had to fight the law. And that's where all the drama come into it.
Amazing. So she leaves your son behind with you. And at one
Yes.
point, does she want her child back? Is that what it was?
Well, this is where the story gets very interesting. The story's what's documented in the book. It's a must read because all the stories relating to the events leading up to there was 2 court cases. Now, the first court case was in the magistrate's court. What she did, she applied for interim custody. This was months and months after she had left. She made up stories that I was a wife basher, abused her, didn't look after the child. The worst of all, she said I was so violent that I was a potential murderer. And that's what she did.
Unbelievable. Now, that is typical in courts across the globe when it comes to custody. The woman wants out of the relationship or the relationship ends, and suddenly the man is an abuser who's a threat, who's violent. And it's all, in many cases, in probably most cases, it's a bunch of baloney. And the
And
courts should know that by now, but they have to take it very seriously. And it puts you in a terrible position because suddenly now you are viewed as a predator. Did they actually
absolutely.
come in and take your son at one point from you? Tell us about how it went.
No. Okay, let's deal with the magistrate's court case first, because that was the first one. The issue I had was prior to, because I only had short notice of this case coming up. So I trotted around to all the lawyers around town. No one, not one lawyer would touch it. They said, you've got no hope of winning that case. The law as it stands, the child will remain with the mother. And you might be lucky, to get either access or you may not even get custody at all. And
Yeah.
that was devastating. So what happened next, it was like a miracle. It was a Saturday night. I had this premonition that to go to church next day. I often went to church. I took my little boy along to the creche. I went along. It really, really gets me, this story. I went to church, and luckily on that day, there was a guest speaker. The guest speaker spoke about family matters, single mothers, the child welfare system, all that. After the service, he met me. He listened to my story. He then introduced me to a lady solicitor. She took on my case. And it was from there, we went to the magistrate's court. And I won't tell you what happened. You'll have to read the book. But I'll tell you what, she was absolutely brilliant. What she did to the magistrate, what she did to my wife's lawyer, they all, to put it, the best way to tell you is this, that without giving too much away, what my lawyer did prior to that magistrate's court case, she applied to the Supreme Court in Auckland to have the custody hearing heard there.
Mm.
So when it went to the magistrate's court, the magistrate didn't even know it was happening. She produced the evidence to the magistrate. He looked at it. There was an uproar in the court, I can tell you. And he said, I'm sorry, but the child has to remain with the father until the case is heard in the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court overrides the magistrate's court.
Amazing. Well, that was a great move because we know
Yep.
how slowly the legal system progresses, that it could be years before the Supreme Court makes a decision in the case. So that bought you time. And the more time you have with your son, the better it is for your case because you're establishing yourself as the primary caregiver. It's a terrible situation. You are blessed to have found an advocate in your attorney or solicitor, as you call it, because many of them tell you this is the facts. When it comes to your child custody, children are property, and that property usually goes with the woman. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's so unfair and it's so destructive, and it also is usually fueled by money because if they become the sole custodian of the child, you have a big bill to pay every month to her,
Absolutely.
which is awful. What advice do you have to dads out there who are contemplating getting divorced, separated right now, or have been abandoned like you were abandoned?
Right. I think, first of all, they must have courage. They must have the will to fight for their child and take on the system. If they know that their wife or the children's mother is telling lies, if you like, and making up stories, he has to gather as many witnesses as possible to go to court and fight for his rights and have really good witnesses. Because in the final custody case, and this is where the story gets very interesting, is that my ex-wife, the mother of the child, she brought all these people in, which made up stories about me, but were proven to be wrong. Now, the fathers out there too, they have to be very, very careful of the welfare department.
Mm.
The welfare, in my case, what they did was they listened to all my wife's side of it, her family and other people. And when it went to the court, they didn't even interview one of my witnesses, not one. It was so biased towards me, but I won't give anything away, because the readers will read exactly what the judge said about the welfare department.
The welfare department is a nightmare here in the United States as well. Again, they view the man as a predator, as a criminal, as a demon. They don't listen to you. They've already made up their mind when you get into that conversation with them. It is all going in the mother's way, and you're left wondering what is justice. And so this is a great book you've written, an important book. It's going to help a lot of dads out there. Where do you go from here? This is part one. What are you envisioning in part two and beyond?
Well, there's a couple of things happening with Sweet Spire. They helped me to get my book out there, made into a movie.
Wonderful.
So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise money to get the first part of it all started. Mm-hmm. We're working towards that, and then I'm working on part two, the conclusion to it, which is more dramatic than the first one.
Amazing, amazing. Well, it's an important book. It's highly recommended to anyone in a custody battle, and you will find yourself in a custody battle 9 times out of 10 when it comes to divorce and separation, if you have children, of course. The name of this book is Custody Part 1, A Father's Fight for His Son. It's an amazing read. It's an amazing story of a dad's perseverance to keep his son. And it's absolutely a must read, because the tips that Daniel gives you in this book will help you tenfold. Daniel, thank you so. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I had one thing too. This all happened in the 70s.
Right.
We are now 2024.
Right.
Things have hardly changed.
Exactly. I went through it in the early 2000s, and it was a complete nightmare. So things have not changed. There is no presumptive joint custody in most cases. Fathers are not given a fair hearing in most cases. And you're right, it's a half century later since you had your battle in the 1970s. And you know how much has changed? Zero.
Why is there so many fathers groups worldwide? Australia, America, England, all over the place, hundreds of dad groups. All fathers, they'll tell you the stories. I have had fathers contact me after they read my book. They have contacted me, and the stories they've told me are horrific. Some of them not even allowed to see their kids. It's shocking.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's part of it. I mean, you lose custody of your child, or you're given joint custody with the mother as the primary parent, and then you have a visitation schedule that is never enforced. So it's an impossible situation. I would drive hours to pick up my children just for her to tell me once I got there, sorry, they can't go today. They're not feeling well.
Yes.
So they can be sick at my house as easily as at your house. And it was a nightmare. And unfortunately, the children bear the battle scars of all this. They can't help to,
Yes,
because you're demonized by her, and it's a tough situation. But
For
you are
children,
doing a good thing with this book, that is for sure.
yes, and not only that, it's also for women to read too, not what to do when they go to court, not
Exactly.
what to do.
Because sometimes the man is the bad guy. Let's face it. Sometimes he is an abuser or whatever, and women need to know what to do when going to court as well.
Not a,
But certainly a fairer system should be in place because it's disheartening how it is right now. Daniel, thank you for joining us here today on Spotlight.
very much for allowing me to tell my story.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.